I'm barely in the picture. Do. Welcome, you guys. Long vacation time. We've got people knocking on our back door right now. The infiltration of people from other nations knocking on our back door. They're gonna beat it down. This could no, we're not gonna reference it to anything in the Bible. You know, it is biblical. If people want a place to live, they want a home. They just don't want to go about doing it the right way. And, so we have some trouble. All right, so I'm not going to talk about crap like that, but it's a shame. They're being used as pawns. All right. The man does crazy things. He uses each other like food and like weapons and all kinds of stuff. You know, we can find ourselves. We don't know nothing about ourselves, but the rulers that rule over us sure know how to push our buttons. You guys, welcome. We've been talking recently about the book of Genesis, and we've been going play by play. We've been going chapter by chapter, taking it apart so much to say that it's kind of boring. No, it's interesting. There are key points in these stories that are worth having, but I have to admit that. Or not admit, I would like to, reiterate that these stories are about what happens on the inside of us. And when we're in this situation when we're, talking with God and conversing, taking his advice or chatting with him in any way whatsoever, we have to be in spirit. That's the way the Bible says. It says that. So, you got to take out of your mind that there's some fleshy thing sitting in front of you, because even the person, Jacob, in the story, is a servant that makes it. He's the brother of his brother. What's his brother's name? Sounds like a hee-haw. Yeah, that's how it sounds like. He serves him. That's his master, Esau. All right, and so in these stories, what happens is that each one of these sides has to have some kind of a change. The spiritual side, which is the guys that are in the mountain, that's Labon and all of these people up there, they have to be smited and corrected. And at the same time, or not at the same time, what happens next is you're exiting down from this place, and you also got to go and make amends to the left side of the brain, the carnal side. So this is where a correction has to happen over on Esau's side, because this whole thing is for Esau. This whole thing is him. That's how it is that he did this for Esau. All right, he is Esau's messenger. He is the servant. He is the guy's spirit. So, or the soul. All right. This is why if you don't have your brother, you don't have no connection to God. So this is why they say that am I my brother's keeper? This was at the beginning with Cain and Abel. Yes, you are your brother's keeper, but if you don't want him, then you don't want God either. And so this is your decision right off the bat to not know anything about your brother. Not know anything about this little seed inside of you that we send off to do our job. And as it grows, it's supposed to increase and make more business. So that's where it's been for the last 20 years of its life. It's been working with the guys in the mountain, increasing and increasing. He came there with nothing, and then he got a wife, and he got another sister, and got all these other things, and children came out of it, and more cattle, and more cattle, and more cattle. All right, and in this particular situation, we have 31. 31 is a 4, so it's talking about travels. They're all talking about travel. 4 is moving from one side of the mind to the other. And right now, he's on the east. He's in the east. He's in this place where, there's lots of abundance and ever flowing fountains of wealth. This is the inside of us. This is no outside place. So as he's going through, and I'm not going to go through all that. That's a lot. It's a whole lot. All right. But I can sum it up for you. All right. Because it does follow the patterns. Of course it does. There's this. It has 55 scriptures. It ends on 32, which is a 5, and it's called this heap and this pillar. Heap and this pillar. He's talking about this is where people, the heap is the heap of rocks that the people gather together and make this into a place where we can worship God. And they put the oil on this pillar. All right. So this is this heap. This is this the heap is talking about, because they've been corrected. He has also not been robbed, but they make it out that he stole all of this stuff, that he stole his wife, stole his daughters, stole those sons, stole all of those cattle and camels, and just ran off down the road with it without telling them shit. All right. Well, they foreshadowed this in the last chapter, chapter 30, because it said that, that there was 3 days travel set between Laban and Jacob. And then the extra 7 days would it take to get there. So this is all talking about the chakra system and this business that goes on inside of us, this thing that God does. All right, so what happens is this side often wants it back. It's not so sure. I mean, it really wants you, but because we're talking about he's the one that introduced the stranger to him, the outside world, the strange woman, which would be Leah, instead of Rachel. What we get is he has to get rebuked. He's worked so hard. Jacob has worked so hard for this guy. He's put 20 years in, so you get just God's creation, mother and father. But he says, I want to send you down. You ran off with my family. I wanted to send you down with mirth, songs, and tambourine or tabret. It means the splitting of the face. So what they do is at the end they make a covenant with each other, right? He hasn't gotten all the way done yet. He has to have a name change before that happens. But right now, on this side of town, this mountainous region is representing the second beast. All right? It has to be taken care of. The brethren would be the skin. They're always second. You always get that second in these stories. And so what we'll get in this one here is that, he rushes down the mountain after him and they meet in the middle. They meet at in tents. And Laban's and his sons show up on one side and him and Jacob and his sons show up on the other, or his entourage. And they get searched because someone stole something of this boss, this Laban. Winds up being Rachel. Rachel, of all the people, steals an image of his gods, and he's missing it. And he's looking for it, and she says that she is told that she hid it in the camel's, she called it, like the seat. It would be like the furniture of the camel. And I know that to be our bones. I know that to be our bones. All right. And that this idea that's just this, she's got this little bit of God with her and they could find it. He could find it. Or else she would be killed. That was the story of the whole thing. But anyways, he didn't find it and he makes this pact. He says, you know what? God gave me your cattle. All right. So this sets Jacob up to be a guy that's going to be like at the well, which is Jacob's well, this idea that, but when you drink from his well, because that he represents really an outside thing when he is Jacob. All right. That's Jacob. Jacob's well is an outside thing. This is a place where you could come to me. But if you drink from that well, you'll certainly stay thirsty. Jesus tells us later on in the 2nd chapter. But anyways, he puts this, the well is here. This is still the place for water in the well. It's right here. And he has put stakes in front of these places so that if any of the cattle were to come up and drink from this well, that they would also be multiplied, like Jacob did. You know, if you could come to this part of our body, if you can come within you and make it to this place, you will also reproduce and be something of millions, of hundreds, of whatever. You know, it's the idea is that you get yourself back. Is how this whole story is. There's no other thing that you get other than you get your own mind back. And so in order to do that, we have to go from the right side of the brain now back to the left side. And so at this particular place, they're making a pact. And he says, I don't want you to jump over this heap or this pillar and bother me. And I won't jump over this pillar and this heap or bother you. So this is creating, again, that pact to his people, to his cattle. And he sets them all, he's in charge of all of them. So he sets the faces of all of these cattle towards the ringstraked. And they call it ringstraked, speckled, and grizzled. Grizzled means gray or death. You know, that's the same idea. That's our body. And because we don't have God, we're not being furnished with the correct water. So we get speckled. This means speckled, black and white. You have a speckled past? Do you have anything speckled? It means that there's something about it that's worthless. So this middle part doesn't work for people that are ringstraked. And ringstraked in these stories means that there's bands of color. So we would say that we have bands of color up here that are black and red and pale and white. Well, black and white is this mixture of this idea of being speckled. Being split in half is this tabaret, the splitting of the face. So this is smiting. This is the idea of smiting, but this isn't tambourine. This is what they're talking about. So there's this idea that there's this word called Mizpah down here on number 4, Mizpah, M-I-Z-P-A, Mizpah. And they say what it is there's like a tag. One's got a heart or something like that, or a tag of some kind, and a tag on another, but it's 2. God will be between me and you, and either one or the other one is out. So the thing is that God is always going to be with this Jacob guy right now, because he says, I want you to go back down into your land, into your kindred, you know. And of course, this is going to, I'm going to put it in this talk right now. You see, he lines up with this heap. This heap is going to be the testimony towards us. And he was rebuked. God called to him while he was dreaming one night, you better not talk terrible to Jacob, neither good nor bad. But he says, I have the power to do this. So in this story right now, they're only getting up to the 6th chakra. He hasn't really gone all this way yet because he hasn't got a name change. You have to go through a name change. And he's representing Israel. He's one of the first people in our Bible, as we're talking about it now in this spot where we are right now in our Bible. He is the very first person that goes to find this balanced place with all of his own business. And Jacob winds up, is the interior side of us. And he's in charge of bringing people over to this other side, just like Jesus would be on his side of things in the second of this. He's in charge. If you don't pass this, if you're weak, I'm going to send you to heaven. That's the idea. The meek is the one that gets it. And all those that are strong, those really strong guys, Jacob keeps. Do you understand? And you think that that's a good thing, but that means that they're still animal in these people, and they're just, you have to wear down to nothing, just like the story that I often use with the Saint Christopher, the giant that he waited. They worked him to death. They worked him for eons and eons and eons in his story until he finally had a little slip underneath his foot and he got a little scared. He got scared for him and for his passenger that he was carrying at that time, which was baby Jesus. And so it was only then that he was afraid and that he was called out for help. It's the most beautiful part of the story. That's when the power came into him, and it was like, oh my God, you almost killed me, you silly kid. And then the kid looked at him and smiled. And he said, oh, it was you all along. I've always wanted this. I've been waiting all my life to serve you. But you know that you can't get in there if you're this strong monster. You can't. You're not allowed. You got to go back out in the field and wear down. They don't want those young puppies like that. They don't want that. You're not God material when you're a child. They want you to grow up a little bit. So anyhow, as the story goes, and I'd like to yada yada over this. Now, what happens is that this is why God, this Laban was playing this role of God. This is role of God, but God's still there. But it ain't together yet. He's still talking. You know, I'll be with you. Go down. I'll take care of you. But, you know, okay, well, I'm going to go. This is the second story. Oh. Ringstraked. I spoke to you the other day about this. Going round in circles. This represents beta frequency. And beta frequency, if you understand that the earth and our lower mind represents the devil and Satan. This is the devil. This is the lower end of us that we're supposed to circumcise ourselves from by doing what God tells us to do, by hooking mother up, and everything will be just fine. But for those of us and those that don't do it or don't understand it or just catching on, Father all by himself is not such a healthy thing to be running around with, you know, but that's everybody's doing it. All right. But what the power of Satan or the influence of Saturn, Chronos, time, is that you have to keep going around and around and round and around the same things over and over again, year after year, generation after generation after generation after generation after everything keeps going around and round and around. That's what it means to be ring-straked. And in this situation, you're following the bitch, you're following the whore, right? Because you're following God's word, and that's the letter, and that's the side that kills us. But we're also on this track for this. All right, so as our bodies change over to the other side and try to bring more brightness into this side of us, does this side have to be rebuked and changed because he's worked the hell out of this guy and he's tricked him and he's done all these different things to him? So that side has got to be rebuked, all right? But until then, it's this heap. We talk about that, all right? So there's a heap means there's an empty space, and you've got to promise not to come over and bother me to hurt me anymore. And I won't come over on your side and try to hurt you. And then he kissed all his friends. He rose up the next morning and told everybody to go to bed or I'll check you later. This idea of raising up is getting up and leaving town. That's getting up and moving on down the road. All right. So this idea of Saturn is to get you caught up into the round, into the cyclical, get you into Saturn, get you into working, get you into earning your wants and your desires and feeding them and all of that stuff, you know. Being the Nazarene, never cutting your hair, never drinking anything from the vine, never tasting anything from within, never seeing death, never, ever staying unclean in front of the Lord until he calls on you. And you made this up a long time ago. You made this vow a long time ago. So does Jacob. He makes a vow to God too. And that's why God says, get up and leave this place. You made a vow to me. You vow is to vow to me. And so it's time for him to come down the mountain. All right. So he's established this first of the changes in chapter 31. All right, that was his travels. He made it all the way over there. He did all that work. He did all that time. He did, and he finished. He wanted to take all his works and all his dealings and all his goods, which he earned, with him. All right, and so we get this idea that you stole it from me. He says, no, I was given this. God gave me your cattle. God gave me. He saw what happened between you and me, and he gave me stuff. So I'm in charge of your cattle. And we are cattle. We are the cattle in this group, you and I, and the trees and stuff. That's what's inside of us. He talks about making the white show. This is the Kundalini. And those that did see it, and those guys that did take from that well, they made good times. Those people that went to it and they just didn't make it, or they were too strong, well, they were separated. So there's this separation of the good and the evil. And in this particular part, evil is strong, good is weak. All right, it's the meat that inherits the earth. Jacob is going through this for the very first time. He is going to represent what a peaceful mind is. Now, I'm going on to the next chapter right in front of you, without all that business. Chapter 30, this is 31. Chapter 32 is going to be representing the body. So what happens is he's traveling. He's on his way. He's like here. And he's got to go and meet up with his brother. And before he gets to his brother, he's trying to soften him up. Because remember, he's stolen everything from him. And just like it seems as if he had just stolen everything from Labon, from his mother's father. All right. And so, and he did it. He earned all this. I earned all of this. I'm taking all this stuff with me. So now he's going to meet his brother and give everything that he had given over to his brother. Wives and all, everything, And then in this chapter, we get the story of this, well, I'm not so sure. I want to get into it. What it is he's afraid that he's going to be taken out and smited by this guy, that he is going to wind up, being judged in this, and that he really doesn't know what's going to happen. But his brother is coming to him also with 400 men. So that would be his brother plus 400, that's 5. So it's the gathering of the 5 senses. It's our body, it's everything. And so this is what's happening in this particular part. The brethren are gathering together. Remember, he's coming from here to there, and he's on his way over to this other side. And so what happens is he sends all these things ahead of him, and nothing really terrible happens to him, and that's in that 5th chapter. But it's the idea that everybody, or the 5th, 32 is 5 representing our body. So on the way over to catch his brother, all right. Then we get into the next chapter, which is number 34. So 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, I don't know which one it is. 31. I'll have to draw it so I can see it. We're talking 31. 32 is when you're on your way. And then 33 represents a 6. 6 is going to be this middle part right here. And in this position here, he winds up meeting up with his brother, and you would think all these terrible things are going to happen. But what he's done is he's increased him twice over. All right. So what he's done is he's won over this thing, and at the very base of this 6, at 6, does he come about with the name Israel. He says, I've wrestled. This is the story too about where he wrestled with someone all night long. This is one of the stories that I talk about and use all the time, that he wrestled with a part of him. All right. He was wrestling with this side, and he found a stone to comfort his head with. And in the story is to comfort your mind. This is this idea. I'd like to have a peace of mind. I would like to have peace of mind. And that means the right and the left side has to come together. And in these stories, that's what's coming down to this when chapter 33 comes in. We get the joining of the both sides and his new name change. This is the same as Sarah and Abraham when they get the H in their name. This is the new you. You get the breath of God in you now. God is dwelling with you. He's not just, talking to you from the outside, if you want to look at it that way. He's inside of you now. And he hasn't been inside of him until this day, until this moment. They have been traipsing around like most all Jewish people do on the seashore. Running up and down the seashore. This is how they're explained in Buddhism. A lot of people running up and down the seashore, but none of them taking out and going out into the ocean. They're just not allowed to go there. The vine cuts off there at 6. And that's where they've been all this time. That's what he was able to do. He in my bad, maybe not so bad listening skills, but my added up and everything, is that he worked for Leah. He worked for Rachel for 7 years and got Leah. And then he worked another 7 years to take them both home. And then he added 6 years for the cattle. And so that brings up to 20. So it goes to show that he still hasn't got the 3, hasn't got the connection going on. And that's why these other ones would be, now we've got his side going on. And whenever they came together, it wound up being a kiss. And it's a beautiful thing. So and then right off, we get a whole nother story when it comes into whatever happens after the 6. When it comes to 7, we get a story about Dinah getting fouled while she was out, hanging out one night. Some guy sees her and rapes her. Family don't do much for that. I'd love to just tell you the story too, to keep from having to write about it, to do it. But this idea of this wrestling with a bigger thing or something else is us trying to get control over the mind. And so he's wrestling with this other person, and he doesn't know who it is. And see, it is, I want you to bless me first. I'm not going to let you go until you bless me, And so you see, this is a reoccurring theme in this situation, is that he's wrestling with himself. And when we have these fights against, David and Goliath, he's fighting against himself. And he goes and cuts his head off in the long run by hitting him with a stone in the middle of his head. These are the stories. Different symbolism, different people, different names, but they're still following the storyline. So at the very end of this, he's going to maintain Israel, and it's going to be on his shoulders for this particular time forever, just like Jesus. Jesus is the way. So is this, and he's got children. The children that he's created are going to wind up being the zodiac, the different people in the skies that have direct influence upon us. This is the beginning of the 4 beasts. The 4 living beasts are going to come to life in no time before our eyes. They haven't talked at all about any of these things. All right. So you'll see that as we get going, that this is at the beginning of our consciousness, and it's still developing. And this is the very first time that someone was able to do what God told them to do in order to gain mother and father, the 2 parts of our brain, together. And they haven't even came up with the name for it yet. It's just this thing that God does. Absolutely beautiful. All right, so this is going to take care of these next 3 chapters. All right, because when we wrestle with ourselves, when we finally, it's us, we're the ones that are responsible for this change. We are the ones that go within ourselves and ask for this change. And it is us that would see this angel, this ladder that takes us from earth to heaven. All right. No one else can see it. It only happens to you. And you only know this because you sat down and started the whole damn thing off yourself. All right. There's no reason to be blind and put your hopes in something that'll never happen. That's the beginning. That's the works. All right. Now it's time for you to learn what the hell you're supposed to do. And instead of just talking about it, do you do the walk? All right. I love you guys. I'll see you in a little bit.